Hey guys, welcome to Nerdarchy for Nerds by Nerds. I'm Nerdarchist Ted, hanging out with some of my esteemed colleagues.
Dave.
And Nate.
And today we're looking at our Dungeon Master's Guide, and we're going to look at variant spell points.
Well, let me start off. My face is a little red on this one. I said they would never do it, and they put it right in the DMG.
Yeah, they put a lot of options in the DMG I didn't expect to see, but this is one I'm very happy to see.
Absolutely. Do you want to tell us why you're happy to see this?
Well, I'm thinking about using spell points for my D&D 5th edition Psionics rules, so
Right.
that's kind of like a big deal that they have spell points in here, because then I don't have to make it up myself, and I would do it a little differently, so I'm actually glad, because they've actually made it look more powerful, but they also have hedged it with the major limitation of 1 6th level, 1 7th level, 1 8th, and 1 9th level spell. So they made it so that, those are like once per day abilities, basically, which I think is appropriate, because with the spell point system, otherwise there's not a cap on certain things, like casting 10 9th level spells in a day would be pretty sweet. But they, of course, if they allowed you to cast more, they would have changed it. So what 9th level spell costs, it's actually pretty cheap compared to what I would have made it.
Right.
So,
Well, I guess with the going with you're only going to do it once a day, irregardless.
yeah.
The cost isn't relevant as much.
Yeah. So yeah, regardless if it's just going to be one a day, then the cost needs to be. If they start to think, well, if you're going to change this into a whole bunch of first and second level spells, what are you going to get out of those point values? So overall, it's pretty much you could reconvert the spell points by level to spell casting. It has the points cost per level of spell, and it's like straight out of the player's handbook, basically. I did the math; it's the same.
If you actually look at I guess someone had asked me how I would do it if I was going to do it. After I told them I didn't think Watts would do it, is basically what I said is look at the sorcerer. It actually gives you the blueprint,
Right.
because that's exactly what it equates to. But hey, now if you want to cast 66 first level spells, you can.
Indeed.
Yeah, so I mean, you can just sit in your airship and destroy an entire army's kobolds with magic missile.
Yeah, you can't advance it, but one of them you can advance one of them because of the odd number.
Yeah. So overall, I like the spell point breakup per level. I like that it's not just 1 through 9, and I also like that they didn't make 9th level spells extremely costly, because
This would totally fix sorcerer.
I agree
opinion.
that this would absolutely fix sorcerer, but I think one of the reasons why they didn't do it was because they're invested in the spell slot system for how the game works for all the character classes.
So you'd have the issue of if sorcerers only went with spell points, how would that merge with, if you went with another casting
Yeah,
class?
multi-class casting.
That's really the tricky spot here, is because you could technically, I guess you would almost, I don't know how it would work out. So if you had say you had like a third level, or not a third level, I want an even number to make my life easier. But if you did it like, I don't know, if you half the level of each and that was your spell casting for the class, but you got them both.
I don't understand exactly what you're saying. Oh, okay, half the so if I'm a 10th level caster, I'm really a 5th level caster for spell points, so I get 27 spell points.
Right, and you'd be 5th level caster for being a wizard as well.
Yeah, that would still allow you'd have enough points to cast 5th level spells. You might not have access to those, but you could still cast at that level.
Right.
And then you could also use your spell slots at that level. But I think the issue with the spell slots would be if you had the caster at 5th, with the spell slots available, you don't have those extra powerful, like at 5th level, you have 3rd level slots. So you'd have that problem where you don't have the proper amount of 5th level slots. And
So if you look at it, if you're a 10th level character and you combine your two things together, you would have access to 5th level spells. Whereas if you're talking about doing it, your way, you'd have 27 points and access to 3rd level spells as a sorcerer, and you'd have so many spells as a wizard and only access to 3rd level.
if you could cast your, let's say it was a druid sorcerer, and the sorcerer had the spell points. If you could cast your druid levels at using your spell pool points as well as your slots, then that would be okay. Because that's kind of like the
well, you know
mechanism
what?
for it.
Actually, you know how you would do it. You would just straight up use whatever conversion they use. Okay, so say you're a sorcerer Eldritch Knight.
Okay.
You get, as an Eldritch Knight, you would only get a third anyway. So you would get a third plus your full level. So if you're a third and third, you would actually be a 4th level caster.
Right.
And you would just take the spell points for 4th level. If you were a wizard sorcerer of 5 and 5,
then you'd use the 10th.
you would just use the 10, and then you have your spells known, and it works out fine.
That would kind of break, your wanting to have it separate between sorcerer and wizard. So basically, you're saying is if you want to play a sorcerer, use the spell points regardless of what other casting class you have.
Well, that's it. Like just by the nature of being a sorcerer, you've switched the spell points, even if you take other spell casting classes.
So that would be a really big advantage because I think the spell point system is fantastic. Gives you a lot of variety. That's my issue I'm running into with Psionics. I looked at this and I said, "This is great," and then I said, "Well, what if you're a Psionic wizard?" I'm like, crap.
So
well, you know what? Then you have to make a decision at that point. If you're going magic and psionics is the same, then you do it exactly the same way. You would go, I'm a 5 and a 5. That's 10, and I use my points either on magic or on psionics, and I don't worry about how that actually really works.
So basically, if you have a class that has spell points, if you select 1 or 2 classes that have spell points as their way of casting spells, then any additional classes that do spell casting do it your way rather
essentially
than the other way.
The player's handbook talks about when you when you are multi-classed, and you take that another level of caster, you're essentially adding the appropriate amount of casting levels appropriate to whatever levels you took in that class. So you go off of essentially whatever your base is.
Okay.
So if your psionicist or your sorcerer uses this as their base, anything you would be adding to, you go this route.
Okay. I mean, I can see it as a big advantage to, say, being a psionic wizard and having the freedom to do spell pool for both the classes. So, I mean, like...
Yeah, all right. Let's step back from that. If you take sorcerer and combine it with any other spellcasting class, as you go up, that sorcerer flexibility is huge just using the metamagics, because you can now use them for any of your spells that you can cast.
Yes.
Okay, so that's true. So you're adding your sorceress advantage for metamagics to the other classes.
When we did the multi-class video, that's why I said, how can I make sorcerers really cool even though I'm not feeling some of this stuff? I go, you know what? I want a sorcerer druid because I'm like, you know what? When you start taking that sorcerer stuff and those metamagics and you start like branching out and combining it with other stuff, it kind of gets really cool.
Mm-hmm. We'll get to see that.
Well, you sold me on the multi-class.
Actually, like Thorn Whip. Like, I think it's it's an overlooked druid cantrip in our group because you guys love Shillelagh.
Yeah,
I love Thorn Whip. One target up to 30 feet, hit them. You do your damage, and it's a pull, right? So
that's a really cool ability.
What if you use distant or twin on that, or what if you have a way to do both? Like I thought about what if you have this spell sniper and you're a sorcerer with twin? Well, that 30 foot is now 60 feet, and for 1 point you can twin it, hitting 2 targets, and you're also drawing them 10 feet closer.
That's nice.
Or the same thing. You can do the same thing with Ray of Frost, where you can twin it, and then you're slowing them. I think it really creates some nice battlefield manipulations.
Yeah.
And then if you take the sorcerer, you go spell points with them. Well, now you can sack out those higher levels, which is a sorcerer can already do this.
Yeah.
It's more time consuming.
Right.
They can convert all of their spells over to spell point or sorcery points, and then convert their sorcery points all over to spell slots. So they already have the ability to do this, but this just means they can do it faster and on the fly.
Yeah, I feel like you'd have to adjust the math for how much, like the metamagics, for example, they're supposed to count as spell levels in a sense. the Metamagic points you get. Like
Mhm.
it, if you twin a spell, you have to spend its value in spell points, like Metamagic points on the sorcerer, and you can stack them to gain. It's like a 1-to-1 conversion,
Right.
Towards Metamagic, but it's an increased conversion to make spell slots. But now spell slots are kind of, and for a sorcerer would be kind of, why would you ever convert it to a spell slot? Because you have a spell pool. So I kind of feel like you'd lose the ability, because it's all spell pool. If you stuck the Metamagic points you get into your spell pool, so they can be used for spells, or they can be used for
Yeah, that's how you would do
for
it.
alteration, then basically you strip out the ability to be able to break down spell slots because you don't have spell slots anymore.
Right.
So that kind of like fixes that issue. It actually becomes cheaper to do Metamagic abilities, because let's say it's a first level spell and you're a first level guy. Well, you have 4 spell points. Sorcerer, you'd have 5 spell points, and you could either take a first level spell, and then twinning it only costs you 1 point rather than spending 2 points like it's a first level spell slot, because at that point.
Well, no, you still have to pay for the spell.
Yes, that's right. 2 points for the spell,
1
and
point to twin it if it's first level.
Yes, if it's first level. So if you take that further down
So
and
that's
say like
3 points.
Let's
so
say I'm a 5th level guy and I have 27 points, and I've got 5 Metamagic, so I've got 32 altogether. And then doing like a 2nd level spell, that might cost you only 3, and then it only costs you 2 to twin it.
that's the same.
Well, it doesn't. It works at an advantage in the overall spell pool, where it doesn't work when you have to convert your spell slots. Basically, there's a loss when you're converting spell slots, rather than it being all just one giant pool.
No, because the spell slots convert the same way over here. Like if it's a 2nd level spell and you convert it to spell points or sorcery points, you get 3.
Okay.
So that's the same.
It's the same.
Oh, like for a 2nd level spell, you get 3. What about a 3rd level spell? Does it cost 5 to get?
It's right from there. I'm pretty sure
Oh, really? It's exactly the same.
it's exactly the same. That's
4th
what I'm
costs
saying.
6, 5 costs 7.
What the sorcerer gains is the fact that they don't have to spend an. I think they can. They have to they either have to spend an action, or they're limited to being able to only convert sorcery points or spells once a round.
Oh, okay.
So
So that conversion is tossed. That's not something you have to worry about then.
right, because it's already in points. But otherwise, that table that is exactly the same, and that's why when people were saying, "Well, how would you?"
Look at that.
2, 3, 5, 6, 7.
I thought there was a difference.
There's no difference. It's exactly the same. Now, if you read it, I think it'll tell you when you're converting, like you're limited to how fast you can convert. Yeah,
You can do it as a bonus action. You can expend 1 spell slot and gain another sorcery points equal to the slot's level. And the issue is your max as a sorcerer. Your cap of sorcery points is that number, basically equal to your level.
Yeah.
Whereas if you had the pool, you would have the ability to just essentially
Metamagic the shit out of stuff.
I'm gonna sack everything, and then be able to Metamagic and use spells the way.
This is
anything
a
you see.
twin empowered, maximized
Well,
dialogue.
there's a thing inside the things themselves, and most of them you can't combine. I mean, you could also just keep this pool separate and say, well, if I'm casting spells from this pool, it doesn't matter.
Because you could have your spell point pool and your sorcery point pool. It's just they're essentially the same. They work with each other. But if you want to, use the spell point variance, you could just say, okay, well, you've got to keep that separate from your sorcery points because.
Yeah, because when you're converting the spells, we're not even going to look at it. But if you're using them, for Metamagics, we got to look because you can only do so many a day.
Right. So, but you'd be able to say, well, I want more sorcery points, so I'm gonna, up to your max, I'm gonna take things out of my spell pool and put it into my sorcery points.
I forget who mentioned this on one of our videos in a comment, but one of the and I'm considering implementing it as well. I got a couple hours to figure that out actually. Is they're like, well, I don't make my sorcerers pick their Metamagics. I just give them all to them. But like, what's the difference? Generally you can only use one around anyway. You're limited by the number of points you have.
Yeah.
And it's like, so I'm like, you know what? That's not bad. You have the flexibility of doing any of them as you want or need.
Do you get access to more later on? Like, is it a special thing? Like,
You
oh,
gain 2 at 3rd, and then you gain 1 at 10th and 1 at 17th.
bah, just get them all on.
There's not that many again. Whether there's 5.
Because
6,
really,
7.
if someone wants to do careful spell,
There's 8, and you only technically get half of them over the course.
careful
of
spell kind of stinks as it is. The evoker special power at 6 is better than it. So I mean, why not? You know, I don't want to make someone spend it on careful spell if they actually want to be able to not hit people with it.
Well, although the careful spell does allow you to use it for any spell, not just one school. So
This is true.
that is
That's the benefit.
The one benefit. So I don't know. So I would actually consider using the spell points in a game, especially it really sweetens the pot for the sorcerer.
Indeed.
Yeah.
Although I've already kind of made some like arbitrary minor tweaks to the sorcerer, so like then like I don't want to have to retcon those, but maybe going forward I might change it over.
So what we think? Spell points.
Good stuff.
You do a multi-class. You just get a pool, and that's how it fixes that
Well,
problem.
here's the funny thing about the DMG. It's like they took everything from every freaking edition, and if it was a rule that people like didn't like, they like took it out of the PHB and the core book, and then they just went and put it back in the optional rules.
Yeah, I
for
feel like
people.
half of the
usually
DMG
like
is,
this.
is like starts off the first sentence. This is an optional rule that
You
you
get
may
like
wanna
60
use.
pages of magic items. So.
Yeah, well, and then
Okay,
the rest
well,
of them are
okay.
optional rules. But I like that. It really does. It drives home DM Fiat and going, hey, this is your game, guys. Play it how you want. I mean, I get comments from you guys and messages from you guys all the time going, how would you do this? How should I do this? Why is this like that? I don't like it. And 90% of the time, I either end or start off with, it's your game. Play it however you want to. It's whatever's fun for you.
Absolutely.
There's no, having fun can't be right or wrong. It's just what you enjoy.
Yeah.
Some of it may send you to places you don't want to be, but by and far, it's your game. Make it your game. Customize it. If you don't like the way a certain rule is written, change it the way you do like it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what the DM does. The DMG does. It has a ton of that stuff, and it's full of you have permission to.
So did we have this all spelled out?
I think so, pretty solidly.
So if you got anything that you want to share with us, put it in the comments below. Speaking of sharing, go ahead and do that. Click like, subscribe.
And check us out on Twitter.
You can also check us out on the subreddit.
So until next time, my friends,
Stay
stay
nerdy.
nerdy.